leave a like and subscribe.
On our last visit to the Old Bailey on the 5th of March 1969, we were found guilty of murder and sentenced to life imprisonment with a 30-year minimum recommendation. We climbed down the stairs to the cells below to start our sentence. To ease the tension, Ron and I shadow-boxed. Cornelius Whitehead was in one of the other cells. He broke down and wept after receiving a 9-year sentence. Whitehead, like Morgan and Kaufman, signed a statement incriminating Ron and me. We left it at that. It didn't do him much good at the end of the day. Yes, I killed Jack McVitie. I denied it at my trial, and I've wished ever since that I hadn't. You see, I'm not ashamed of having killed him. I don't believe I had any choice. It was either him or me. In my head, I had to kill McVitie. He was killed for several reasons. He cheated us, not once, but several times. He was becoming a danger to himself, to the whole system we had built up, and a danger to me personally. He had said publicly on more than one occasion that he wanted to kill me, and I had good reason to believe that it was no idle threat. He'd become crazy, his mind demented by a combination of booze and drugs. So in October 1967, I killed him. I did not regret it at the time, and I don't regret it now, even though the extermination of a man no better than a sewer rat has cost me my freedom for the best part of my life. I have paid the greatest price of all. Hanging would have been preferable to the hell I've been through for the past 26 years. Every day, even now, is a living nightmare. The price I've paid has been totally out of proportion, but still I say I don't regret it. Over all these long years that I've been behind steel bars, I can't think of any one time when I've been able to relax, lie back and listen to utter silence. Because even when a prison is quiet, it's still noisy by the rest of the world's standards. I think back to when we lived in a rambling old mansion we owned deep in the Surrey countryside. There, set in 9 acres of gardens and paddocks, I often found moments when everything stood still. This could happen at any time of the day, any time of the year, and then I could close my eyes and there would be nothing. No bird song, no cars, no rustle of wind in the trees, not even the distant barking of a dog, and I would feel my cares and problems wash away from me. Deprived of that small pleasure, I'm often very conscious of how much I miss the solitude that profound silence can bring. It doesn't matter where you go in the prison system, there is always that hum of an institution. During the day, there is a constant buzz of noise, shouting, laughing, singing, crashing of doors, radios blaring, the never-ending sound of footsteps, and in the dead of night a muffled cough or cries of distress are there to break into one's reverie. Still, with the single cells we are allocated here at Maidstone, the hours between 7:45 in the morning and 7:45 at night can at least be spent in much-needed privacy. Though I enjoy my days spent among friends, I find that as the day wears on, I am looking forward to bang up. In perhaps a similar way, a working man looks forward to going home, putting his feet up and relaxing. To the screws, the secure rooms they lock us into overnight are cells, nothing more, nothing less. But to the individual prisoner, it is his home, and in fact I refer to mine as my flat. Each time a cell is vacated due to the transfer or release of the previous occupant, it is stripped out, searched thoroughly, and left in a basic state for the next con. The authorities supply a minimum of comfort, and it's up to the individual to put his own mark on the place. When I arrived here early in 1994 from Blunderston Prison in Suffolk, the furnishings consisted of a bed, a chair, a table, and a couple of cupboards. Hardly the most welcoming sight when you know that you will be spending 12 hours of every day locked up inside it for the next 10 years. But in no time at all I had transformed this bleak room into a cozy study, with the help of friends and supporters outside who supplied me with what was needed: a soft carpet and lemon-coloured curtains with pelmets and matching bedspread soon put a bit of warmth into the room. I added a comfortable settee, another table, an aquarium holding 9 fish, and my music system. Here and there I placed treasured ornaments and mementos and hung photographs of family and friends on the walls. Now it was truly home. You may know that I was being held in Loose Prison, Sussex in the early 90s. From there, I was shipped out to HMP Blunderston, which is situated on the edge of the Dickensian village of the same name, not many miles from Lowestoft. What I would have given to have wandered freely along the wooded lanes and narrow streets of the village, but all I could do was gaze in frustration through secure windows at the tantalizing view of red pantiled rooftops and church spire. Having read and enjoyed many books by Charles Dickens, I would love to have walked around and physically touched the local landmarks he mentioned so often in David Copperfield: the church, the Plough Inn, and the white-walled thatched cottage named the Rookery, which was the home of the book's hero. While I never visited this village when I was a free man, I was no stranger to Suffolk, as it was not far from here that Ron and I had owned and lived for a time, in a mansion known as the Brooks. We all loved it there, including our parents, who lived in the gatehouse on and off for a long time. We were both saddened to see it sold off after our arrest. I had no complaint against Blunderston Prison, other than it was a great distance for my friends and family to travel for visits. Today the prison authorities try and place inmates within a reasonable distance of their hometown or where their families live. Though with a touch of cynicism, I feel this is more to do with economics than compassion. When a husband or father is imprisoned, in many cases his family is forced to rely on government handouts to survive, which then makes them eligible for visiting expenses if they have to travel over a certain distance. Logical then to move the con and save some money. I wish this system had been in place when my mother was alive. It broke my heart when I thought of the toll it must have taken on her to visit her sons, particularly in her later years. Not that she ever complained. That wasn't in her nature, but imagine the strain of getting from the East End to Parkhurst on the Isle of Wight, or Gartree way up north. Most of my family and close friends made the effort to visit me in Blunderston, but many more, much as they would have liked to, could not, and I understood. So with this in mind, it was not too long before I applied for a transfer to Maidstone. More than 2 years were to pass before my request was granted, and even then, it was unclear as to when I would get my actual moving date. First I was told it would be the end of this week, and then it was changed to the week after that. A month would pass, and another date would be given, only for me to see it pass once more. By the time it became definite, I was completely pissed off, and only really cheered up when I was actually on the prison coach. I can tell you I gave a loud sigh of relief when the coach pulled away from the prison gates. An hour passed, and just as I was thinking that at this rate we will be there in no time, a call came through on the mobile telephone. One of the screws said something to the driver, and he immediately pulled over into a lay-by and stopped. The other prisoners and I sat quietly and watched the staff climb from the coach and go into a huddle of gesticulating arms and raised voices. A thought passed through my head: here we go. They've realized their mistake, and I shouldn't be on the coach. I held my breath until a screw climbed back on board and told us that all our medical papers had been left behind, so we would have to wait until a taxi brought them from the prison. We sat in that lay-by for 2 hours. At first it made a pleasant change to sit and study a fresh view of rolling fields, trees and cloud formations. But in my highly charged state of anticipation at seeing old friends at Maidstone, I soon became impatient and lost interest. Eventually the documents were brought from the prison by private taxi, and we were on our way at last. 20 minutes later, the coach began to shudder, and once again the driver pulled over, this time in a cloud of steam. I just leant back and closed my eyes. This was not my day. The coach was beyond repair, at least at the roadside, so again we would have to wait. To save us hanging about for hours, I suggested to one of the screws that he should phone for a police van and get us taken to a local prison where we could be picked up later. Much to my surprise, he took my advice. A van turned up soon after, and we were taken to Felsham Prison for tea and a meal. By the time we had finished, a coach had been made available and was ready and waiting to take us to our destination. As we crossed the new road bridge at Dartford, perhaps 200 feet above the Thames, I looked out of the window and gazed up the long stretch of darkened river. Somewhere, beyond the million sparkling lights, unseen yet only a dozen miles away, lay the East End, and at that moment I felt closer to home than I had done for more years than I can remember. A memory popped into my head of sitting in Polici's cafe on the Bethnal Green Road, savouring a coffee and talking to good friends. Does the cafe, which has been there since the turn of the century, still open its doors every day? Does pencil-moustached Nevio Polici still bustle around shouting orders through to his wife Maria, or Mama as she was known? That place served the best food outside of your own mother's kitchen, and it still makes my mouth water at the thought. The rolling wooded countryside of Kent brought back a memory of when I had driven through these same parts well over 40 years before. Ron, myself and two friends stole a car from the Roman Road area. I can't remember what make of car it was, but I can still recall the smell of rich leather upholstery and the excitement we felt as we sped through the Blackwall Tunnel and out into the country. I think we got as far as a place named Shorn before we ran off the road and wrecked the front of the car on a stone road sign. Thinking it a great joke, we shoved it into a field beside a haystack, pulled some straw over it, and then thumbed a lift back to London on the back of a lorry. Hoping time would pass quickly, I closed my eyes and once again let my mind drift back into the past. 26 years in captivity. I can hardly believe that passage of time. With a sentence of 30 years, there is little point in scratching off each day on a calendar. I'm reminded of Henri Charrière, who wrote Papillon. He was imprisoned on Devil's Island and spent many years in solitary confinement. When given a sentence of, say, 4 years, he would say to himself, "That's only 8 periods of 6 months," and would scratch off each 6 as they passed. I still think our sentences were too harsh, but, like it or not, there was nothing else to do but knuckle down and see it out. As any con knows, the first years were the worst, and I have to admit I kicked against the system. If a screw looked at me the wrong way, I'd knock him on his back. These people, whom I would never tolerate for a moment outside the prison, had my every hour in their control. Do this, do that was never something that I was good at accepting. Eventually, I realized no matter what I did, the system was always going to be bigger than me, and I settled down to do my time. So I suppose they won in the end. I eventually decided that the only way to accept incarceration without going mad was to acknowledge that these walls were my home for however long it would take. Forget the outside. Don't torture yourself with what could have been. A misconception that many people have is that because of my notoriety, I get some sort of special treatment inside. This couldn't be further from the truth. This is not America, where the John Gottis can buy themselves luxury. I am treated the same as the lowliest con. The only difference might be that I find I am fortunate enough to get a lot of respect from those around me. I spent many years on Category A, which is like being in a prison inside a prison. You're watched constantly, and visitors are rigorously investigated by the police before they are allowed to visit. This in itself prevented many of my friends from coming to see me because of their criminal records. At the same time, a number of my friends were themselves in the system, so I was not without company by any means. My weekly wage is in the region of £6, and from this you are expected to buy all the necessities for daily life, and if there is any left over, to buy little luxuries like the odd chocolate bar. No, Ronnie and myself are not living the high life on squirreled away millions. All our money soon disappeared as the years passed, and sad to say, we have to get by on the munificence of others. I must say I am blessed in having legions of followers on the outside who send in money, trainers, stamps and other materials. With so many years behind me, I am now looking forward to my next parole hearing. I am quietly confident that I will get the result I am hoping for. After all, I have kept my nose clean for years now and glide along in the system from day to day, bringing no disruption to the daily life of the prison. In fact, I think I do a certain amount of good, as my reputation means I am listened to when I give sound advice to young tearaways. I only have to point at my own tariff for them to see that crime does not pay. It might seem to in the short term, but eventually the law will catch up with you, and then you have to pay the price. There is nothing macho about spending years behind the door, away from friends and family with your life on hold. One of my greatest sorrows was being separated from my brother Ronnie when we were sentenced. I am very rarely allowed to visit him in Broadmoor, and when I am able, I am handcuffed, shackled, and stuck inside a van with 4 screws for the trip to Berkshire, which takes a couple of hours and can be most unpleasant in the heat of summer. What do they think I am going to do at my age? Overpower the screws and make a bid for freedom. Perhaps many years ago I might have thought of some means of escape, but with my freedom on the horizon, I'm not likely to attempt to escape now. The view out of the steamy window, stretching down the hill and towards the centre of Maidstone and the prison, snapped me out of my reminiscing. We had arrived, hours late, but at last I was here. Once I was passed through reception, the frustrations of the day were soon forgotten as I met 2 of my closest friends, Joe Martin and John Hybner, in an emotional reunion. I had not set eyes on either of these men for almost 15 years. I first met Joe back in 1964 when Ron and I were in the Green Dragon Social Club down Aldgate. We were introduced, had a drink together, and as often happens when you meet a sound person, we hit it off immediately. Sadly, the time we were to spend together in the free world outside was limited. A couple of years after our first meeting, Joe was convicted of murder while carrying out a robbery armed with a shotgun. This man, who fought with honor and bravery for his country during the Korean War, was given a savage sentence, and today, 29 years later, he is still paying the price for that one mistake. The taking of a life is not to be taken lightly. It's a very serious mistake, but what can be achieved by keeping him locked up year after year with little hope of release? I know he has always regretted what he did, so surely this remorse must count for something. At 61 years of age, he will never reoffend, so I think he should be allowed to spend his remaining years as a free man in peace and happiness. Some years after Joe was sent away, Ron and I were destined to follow him. Ron spent a number of years with him in Durham prison, while I got to know him even better when we served time together in the top security block at Parkhurst. I am proud to state that I love him like a brother, and, with few in the system like him, he has my greatest respect. John Hybner is roughly 10 years younger than me, and I've known him since he was a teenager. He spent a lot of time in our company, and I'll always remember the time when Ron, myself and some of the firm went along to Repton Boxing Club to watch him in action against John H. Stracey. It was only a friendly spar that Ron had arranged, but we were pleased to see our young friend put up a good show against the man who in later years was to become welterweight champion of the world. John was a useful and loyal member of the firm right up until we were arrested on the Cornell and McVitie murders. After that, the next time I was to meet him was when he was brought into the hospital block inside Parkhurst prison after an assault on a screw. This is normal procedure after a prisoner has had a flare-up, and did not mean he had been hurt in any way. I was pleased to see him again, but shocked when he told me he had recently been given a life sentence with a recommendation of 25 years. This was for the alleged contract killing of Beatrice Gold, who owned a dress factory in Clerkenwell. She had been shot in the head. John swore to me that he was innocent, and over the 20 years he has served since, he has never wavered in this plea. My mother Violet was a very good judge of character, and I know she thought the world of him. After we went away and up until it was his turn, he kept an eye open for her to make sure she was all right, and for that I'll always be grateful to him. Apart from meeting old and trusted friends once more, the move to Maidstone allowed me to receive visits on a more regular basis from many other people from the outside. In no time at all, my visiting days were a social event to be looked forward to. In a way, it was these visits by old friends that prompted me to write down further reminiscences of my life as our conversations sparked off my memories. Now that I am more accessible, I find that I am seeing people that for various reasons I have not seen for many, many years, and almost without exception, our conversations follow a similar pattern. After the initial greeting and catching up on news, around the time of our third cup of tea from the canteen, my visitor will say, "Do you remember?" And off we'll go on a pleasant trip down memory lane. "Do you remember that time we had a sort out with the Pachita mob?" Or, "What about that time your granddad squared up to that fella in the pub?" "Bet you don't remember the time you fell in the canal." And yes, I did remember them as though they were yesterday. Banged up at night, I'd run the day through my mind, something I've done all my life. Those revived memories would conjure up others. Faces and incidents blurred in my subconscious would spring out with fresh clarity, and I'd find myself laughing out loud, or at other times wiping a tear from my eyes. I never cease to be amazed by the infinite capacity of the brain. It seems that nothing we have ever seen or heard is lost or forgotten. It just needs a word, a tune, or an evocative scent, and immediately the brain releases what we might have thought were forgotten images into the conscious mind. I find that I have total recall. Why, I don't know. It may be a gift, or more likely a practiced art. My habit of running the day and all its incidents through my mind as I settle down to sleep, I am sure fixes thoughts into my mind forever. In many ways, this can be a double-edged sword, for while memories are all I have left of many people and places, some things are best left buried deep and forgotten. It was quite a coincidence that, having decided to keep myself busy by noting down memories, I should get a letter urging me to write a book. That same evening, I approached Bang Up with the sense of excitement that always fills me when I am embarking on a new project. Strangely enough, the thought of deliberately evoking the past gave me a feeling of anticipation, as alone in my room, I would once more be seeing in my mind people and places from the past, armed with a large flask of boiling water, so that I could make tea at any hour. I made my way up to my flat in readiness for lockup at 7:15. To those of you outside who at this time of night are getting ready to go down to the pub or club, this must seem ridiculously early for grown men to be shut in for the night. But this is the way of the system, and over the years I have got used to and accept such routine without complaint. Over the years, I have taken a great interest in the customs and lifestyle of American Indians. I find that their philosophies are very similar to my own: respect, a code of honor, and the ability to face adversity without complaint. I read everything I can about these proud people: Pawnee, Cheyenne, Sitting Bull, Cochise, Red Cloud, magical names that transport me back to our Saturday morning cinema, where we would shout ourselves hoarse as the cavalry came over the hill to wipe out the damned redskin. One of the less spiritual habits I have copied from the American Indian is that of sleeping on the ground, which they felt brought them closer to the spirits of nature. In my case, with the bare earth beyond my reach, I accept second best and stretch out on the concrete floor. With a sheepskin blanket under me and a similar one over me for warmth, I rest my head on a hard pillow, and by 8:10 I'm asleep. 5 hours later, I awake totally refreshed and eager for the new day. It is now as quiet as it can ever be in a prison. Not silent, but quiet enough for thought and contemplation. Later in the day, I will have a strenuous workout in the gym, but for now, 50 press-ups tone me up and get the blood going. I follow this with a cold wash at the basin. Then from the flask, make the first of many cups of strong tea that I will drink during the day, and pen in hand, I'm ready to lose myself in memories of the past. For you to understand the person I am, you will have to be aware not only of the environment I came from and the people I grew up with, but my life in the context of the morality and hardships of those times. You also have to look further back to the lives and living conditions of those that came before me, because it was their conditions and standards that would eventually shape mine. The East End has always been a world apart from the rest of London. Up until the late 1940s, it was notorious for its slums, poverty, disease, prostitution and villainy. I'm no historian, so I cannot say why this area should have been singled out to be a place akin to a hell on earth. But from what I have read on the subject during the period in which my grandparents were born, which for all of them was roughly in the 1870s, almost 1 million people were crammed into an area of less than 2 or 3 square miles. When you think that Queen Victoria was well into her reign at this time, the medieval descriptions of the east of the city are almost unbelievable. In earlier times, villages such as Hoxton, Haggerston and the cottages built around the Bethnal Green must have been almost rural as they were, near the River Thames and just outside the bustling city. But as the population grew steadily and more housing was necessary, each little village or hamlet was swallowed up until they became one. The beginning of the 19th century saw an even greater influx of families seeking work and their fortunes on the fabled streets paved with gold. What might once have been reasonably designed housing was now to become a haphazard jigsaw as 3-story tenements squeezed into every possible space, with access through dismal courts and dark alleyways. I suppose that for a time, the housing was used as intended, perhaps a family living on each floor and conditions were not too bad. But then, as general unrest and economic problems swept through Europe with the potential famine in Ireland and lowering standards in our own agricultural system, the tide of immigration to the rich city became a torrent. On finding that London was not the utopia they expected and with little work to be had, the migrants gradually gravitated downwards until they collected in the sump that was the East End. Within this hopeless ghetto there were 3 classes: the poor who had a regular job and brought in around £1 a week, the very poor who might manage to scrape together half this amount, and at the bottom a nameless group who barely subsisted on church charity and scraps. These people lived hand to mouth, not weekly, but hour to hour. This would have been the sort of society my grandparents set up home in. I don't know at what level they lived in their earlier days, but whether poor or penniless, the conditions they would have had to put up with were the same for everyone. That's all for this edition. If you enjoyed listening to my reminiscences, watch out for the next one.
Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please join our Facebook group. It's called Krays Crime Lords of London. We're a friendly moderated group with over 1,000 Kray and other celebrated gangster videos available for view. There's also thousands of images in the photos sections. The link for the group is in the YouTube description section. I hope we see you there soon.
Leave a like and subscribe.